I'm Nicole Matthews, corporate America dropout turned entrepreneur and owner of the Henley Company, an event, travel, and lifestyle management firm. It wasn't that long ago that I was dreading my drive to my fancy corporate job each day or felt disenfranchised with the work I was doing. In 2007, I jumped off the corporate escalator and directly into the elevator of opportunity. Today, I'm an author, speaker, educator, and serial asker. I wholeheartedly believe that your life changes when you start creating your own opportunities and making big asks. Hands down, the business and life I have today is 100% the product of giving myself permission to design the life I want to live. It was always my dream to work at the Olympics, and by making a big ask, that dream became a reality. I now have multiple Olympic projects to add to my life resume. I created the Big Ask podcast to share these best practices with you. Whether you're an entrepreneur hungry for revenue-generating tips or an individual restless to make a significant change, the life you want to live could be just one big ask away. Get ready to be entertained by real-life stories, no-filter conversations, and inspired by the daily hustle. So let's get started. This is the Big Ask Podcast. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Big Ask Podcast. I'm Nicole Matthews, and I'm delighted today to be joined by a new friend and a colleague, Shoshanna Mitchell, who's a life coach and owner of Kaleidoscope Life. And Shoshanna and I became friends through a nonprofit we both serve on a board for. And as soon as I heard her accent and she found out I was an Anglophile, I think we were a match made in heaven. So Shoshanna, welcome to the Big Ask Podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I'm so excited to be a part of it with you.
Oh, it's going to be great. You're always such a ray of sunshine. So I know this conversation is going to be very easy and insightful. So thanks again.
Pleasure. It's a real pleasure.
Yep. Good. So I've had the pleasure of getting to know you for the last couple of years, but just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you say, originally from England, London born. I moved to San Diego when I was 30, so 4.5 years ago. And I guess just to kind of do a really quick overview of career and how I ended up here, I studied law at university, which I did love, but very quickly realized it wasn't a career that I wanted to pursue full time. I wanted something that felt a little bit more kind of, for me, I want to say like wholesome, I suppose. And so I took the skills I learned in law and moved into working for the government in the UK to prevent human trafficking and help prevent sexual abuse against children. So working to support those, investigate the perpetrators and take it through the court process. So I did that for several years. And then I made a real transition across into the corporate world, where I was running a business in London. It was a bit like a WeWork, I suppose, but it was a one-off, standalone, fancy members club in London. And that's where I met my current boss, who poached me and asked me if I would help set up his current business. So he had a consultancy and he wanted someone to bring the culture, bring on the right people, help run, oversee operations with finance, marketing, but the talent was my favorite aspect of it. And we've been doing that for a few years, and then more recently have branched out into setting up the Kaleidoscope Life, which is a coaching business. So really helping individuals discover, not fixing anyone, there's no need to be fixed, but really discover what it is they already have within them and how they can bring that into the world to live a life that's, much more fulfilling for them, where they're, I don't want to say free of fear, because I don't think we're ever really free of fear, but, they can manage some of those fears and anxieties that seem to be pretty rife today.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of a real quick synopsis overview.
It's all good. So we'll definitely dive deeper into Kaleidoscope Life, but I just do want to circle back to your work in human trafficking, which I know is a pretty heavy topic. But what do you think what conversation isn't being had about human trafficking that needs to be had? Like, most people don't realize this. I think that it's such a significant problem. I mean, they hear that word, but they don't really understand the depth of that. So is there any insight you can give us really into that area?
I think that, like you say, the biggest problem is that people just aren't hearing that it's going on enough. And it's that sort of mindset of, well, I don't see it, I don't really hear it, so it can't be that bad. And actually, it's pretty shocking how rife it is. It is a huge, it's $1 billion industry, trafficking. And it's really heartbreaking. I think one of the things about human trafficking that not a lot of people are aware of is, usually in the media you see the stories where it's a charming man and he's groomed a girl and she thinks she's going to live a great life and then gets forced into prostitution. I think what a lot of people don't realize is, very tragically, in a lot of developing countries, parents are willingly selling their children for this trade. They might not know it's for, the sex trade, labor, they usually think it is, but out of sheer desperation, because they have nothing, they're selling their children. And I think to us, that's just I couldn't sell my dog, it's really unfathomable. And I think that goes to show that we can't even begin to understand the desperation and the poverty that these people must be in. And so it's a case of really people need to open their eyes and educate themselves on it. With anything, just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not happening.
Right, definitely. And I know here in San Diego, it's sadly is a big industry. With us being a border city, I think we rank in one of the top cities in the United States, if I'm not mistaken, for human and sex trafficking. Again, because of the border, and it's just shocking that you think within, you don't even know, is it 5 houses from me? Is it 5 miles from me? Is it 50 miles from me? But it's happening somewhere close to us, and most people don't even know that. And it's so shocking to hear those sort of statistics.
It really is. When you hear kind of the money that's involved, the numbers, there is an organization called Outreach Underground Railroad, I want to say. They're based out of Utah, and they really focus on it. And I mean, you only have to go to their website to see, all the information and all the facts, and how, like I say, rife it is. As a border city, this is one of the worst places. But it's such an education piece. People need to look at it, really need to read into it, because sadly, without wanting to sound negative, which is not, which isn't this person, but the facts are, actually, it's very much likely that something is going on in your neighborhood.
Yeah. It's so hard to comprehend. So thank you for shining light on that and giving us even a brief education, because I think it is something that people really need to be, aware of. And it is amazing that it's happening so close to all of us, and we're not paying closer attention to it. So, we'll move on to something a little lighter and brighter. Not that that's not an important topic, but so you moved to the U.S. I know the consultancy firm that you were with brought you to the U.S. And so here you are, a young beautiful English girl setting up shop in San Diego. What was that transition like for you, either personally and professionally? What have you noticed, like business-wise, between the two countries as you've begun to work in both countries?
I love talking about that topic, like the cultural differences and my experience, because it really is interesting. You think I did, between kind of America and England, it won't be hugely different, and we speak the same language, which I'm discovering there is plenty of words that we have that are different. I've nearly been in trouble on a few occasions. But I think that, a lot of it's going to depend on your approach when you're making a transition like that. I was 30, I'd hit a crossroads. I always knew I wanted to work abroad at some point, especially somewhere sunny. So when this opportunity came up, I grabbed it. And I think that when I first got here, when I first landed, I spent the first 3 weeks, I've kind of made a pact with myself, spend the first 3 weeks just decompressing. You've just arrived, download and process everything that's going on. But then I said to myself, after those 3 weeks, you're just going out there and you're just saying yes to every invitation. And, you know, some work out and some don't. That's fine. You take the lessons from the ones that don't work out. But really cast a wide net just to immerse myself in the entire experience. Really try to understand the neighborhoods, the restaurants, the bars, all those sorts of things. And so, yeah, I think that because of how I approached that and, you know, being willing to chat to anyone and say yes, it was a really positive experience moving here. Everyone was very friendly. I would be in the coffee shop queue and, you know, somebody behind me would start chatting to me, or I was at the nail salon and then they became my friend, and it's so friendly. I really wonder if someone were to go from America to London, well, which you might be able to give experience on,
Yes.
whether they experience, because I think we're a little bit more grumpy over there.
Yeah.
We hide behind our newspaper on the tube, on the subway, you know, rushing and bustling around. London in particular, because it's a really big city, right? Potentially similar to New York, but I think San Diego is just such a different hub of warm, welcoming, friendliness, being outdoors. People are happy because we live in San Diego. Yeah. So it was such a positive experience for me here that I don't think I would have experienced the other way around. And I think that, you know, you talk about culturally, it's really hard to say America as a whole, because I just think California is so different to the rest of America as well. So a lot of my experience, where I'm coming from, is talking about California in particular. But you know, that personally, I found it wonderful. Really easy to make friends and have wonderful new experiences. Professionally, there are some interesting differences. Actually, I think in the business world, I found working here harder and less friendly than in England. I know one of the first things I had to get around was these kind of short emails that people would send. There was none of the British, I hope you're well and had a lovely weekend. Okay, thanks, bye now, on the email. You just get, hi, Shoshanna, can you do blah, blah, blah? And I was like, oh no, they're mad at me.
Right.
And I really had to get used to that. But then you pick up the phone and then you have a brilliant conversation and it's lovely. But on email, it was a really different dynamic and I was thrown. And also I think culturally, business culture, it's still, in my experience, quite corporate and hierarchical here. And I think people are really coming around to this idea of a corporate culture. And I'm just so big on corporate culture because work is a huge part of your life and it needs to be a productive environment. But I do think in England, there's a little bit more of a relaxed environment, not as, I mean, you can always find different companies, there's exceptions, but not as corporate and hierarchical as we are here. You know, titles are a really big thing here. It's just not, it's not quite the same there. So yeah, I found the business side a bit more brash and harsh, but the personal side, wonderful.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So I moved to Reading, which, you know, is a town, for those who don't know, is a town outside of London, about 40 miles or so outside of London. And I can just remember two things really mainly. The first thing was the team that I was working with. I was hired as a consultant. And so the team I was working with could not get over the fact that I would purposely choose to move from San Diego to Reading. They were like, what is wrong with you? What, you know, you've lost your marbles. Why would you ever come to this place that wet stuff falls from the sky constantly? And the year that I was there, the area had more rain than it had had in 200 years. So I was literally, I felt like, you know, Noah and his ark had shown up as I was learning how to drive on the opposite side of the road and, you know, all these things. So that was always very interesting to me. And then to your point about people being friendly or not friendly. So I found during the workday, everyone was super friendly, but then everyone would go home. And then I was sort of left with like, okay, now what do I do? Like, I just had to go back to my flat. And it did take me a while before one of the women I worked with, her family just adopted me, and then it was off to the races, right? But that sort of, that guard of we're at work or we're at home was very difficult for me in the beginning because it was hard to meet friends in London, just because it felt, like you said, sort of behind their newspapers, very friendly at work, but not necessarily as friendly of like, hey, let's, you know, all get together for dinner this weekend. So that took some time to sort of break that ice. So.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's the, just in England, we don't so much unless it's with key people that we know really well already, say, oh, let's go for drinks, oh, let's do this, let's do that. I actually think the weather does have an impact on that, because here it's so easy. Let's go for a walk, let's go outside, you know, expect more things to do outside. Whereas in England, it's pretty rainy and miserable. The views aren't as good, so people don't really want to be outside. But I think you're right. That's exactly, it's interesting how the difference, you know, personal side of work. That we have.
Definitely. 100%. Yep. 100%. But I would highly recommend, I mean, everybody at some point in their life should have to live in a different country, because it gives such just an important perspective. And even though, like you said, the UK and the US are not that different, they are different. And, you know, then take it even at a further level of like moving to a country where that's not your native language. I just think that's really important life lessons. And I'm so grateful for the experience that I've had working abroad. And I know, you know, for you, it's been a huge piece of your life story as well.
A huge part. I just cherish it so much for really kind of opening my eyes and what else is out there, broadening my knowledge. All those experiences are really enriching, and I think ultimately help you understand others and individuals and cultures and communities, which all feeds into being a bit more empathic, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
You need that travel through work or pleasure to bring you some.
Yeah, definitely. So I know during the quarantine, you've been focusing on your Kaleidoscope life, and you know, we're grateful for, I think this, you know, as much as the pandemic has knocked, you know, most of us to our knees, at the same time, it has given us time and space to look at other projects. And so, and I think really kind of center ourselves on what work do we want to be doing? Like when this all goes back to quote, normal life, what do I really want to be doing with my life? You know, do I want to be going back to the life I had pre-quarantine, or do I want to be going in a different direction? And so I know with you have a new venture, which is Kaleidoscope Life. So let's get a little deep into that and what that looks like, and where did the inspiration for that new path come for you?
Definitely. I would love to just jump in, because it's so funny how we keep talking about this new normal and moving into the new normal, don't we? And I've really been trying to not say that. I have been referring to, I'm looking forward to moving into the new fabulousness.
Oh, very good.
Of what is to come. Because it's funny, we're like, a new normal, like even the word normal is boring. Let's move into something. I'm scared to say great. I don't want to say let's go because of the connotations around saying let's get great again or anything like that. But let's move into something new and fabulous. And so I do think this time has really given us the opportunity, even if we were unwilling at first, to really reflect and realize again, you know, the old cliche of life is too short. And what can I do with it? It makes people, you know, a lot of us, I think, were meandering. We were, you know, okay with what was going on. We had fallen into complacency, and something like this really shifts and shakes that, which I believe is needed. And so, you know, after the initial upset of what was going on and us being very resistant to the change, a lot of people have been able to reassess what their priorities are. I have always loved coaching. That's been my favorite part, you know, in the work that I've done and building a culture, essentially people enjoying what they do and feeling fulfilled, which has been kind of, I guess, more in the workplace. But I think if you're fulfilled in the workplace, that spills into personal time as well, which is positive. And so I've been able to really go deeper into this coaching practice that I want to do by myself, have it as my own company, take it in the exact direction I want, not have to work within the framework of a corporate organization. So really be able to run free and wild with it.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think what I've been so proud of how you've navigated, you had a loss last year, your mom passed very unexpectedly, and how you've navigated that grief, which I know has not been easy, but you continue to show up in the world as positive as you know, as you were before that happened to you. So I have just marveled as your friend at you navigating that path. So thank you for being a wonderful example of navigating grief. But I remember a conversation you and I had about as you were back going through some things of your mom's, and you found some of her books or her writings. She was a therapist, if I'm not mistaken, right? And how you've just looked at that as a sign that your mom from even beyond was sort of helping you to find this new direction. And I know that gave you some energy to take on this new venture, which has been really wonderful to watch as a friend on the outside, watching you navigate this.
Absolutely. I really enjoy, which is a bizarre word to use, I suppose, in the context of grief, talking about this, because I hope that it inspires others. But yes, as you say, I did lose my mum very suddenly and tragically last summer. And because she was a psychotherapist, I was so fortunate to grow up in a home where, you know, it's okay to be vulnerable. You must communicate your feelings all the time. Therapy is not a taboo. In England, therapy is a real taboo still. Very different to here. And so as soon as this happened, you know, my mom was truly my best friend, my biggest child. I'm very blessed to say I had a very rare relationship with my mom. So it was a huge blow. But she had truly, because of her experience of having counselling herself, becoming a counsellor, and doing her own research around post-traumatic growth, she'd been like dropping these little tools in my toolbox her whole life. I always say that not only did she leave me the most comprehensive toolkit, she left me the full instruction manual on how to use it well. So I'm so lucky that I've been set up with those foundations. But she was a psychotherapist, I was helping others, that was in the family. And I found this incredible book, and she was such a voracious reader. She highlights and makes notes. And I found this one book, and she'd highlighted this section, which was just phenomenal. It was actually somebody who was passing himself, who at the later stages of cancer had written the book. And she highlighted a section that said, "What I want to tell my daughter is this: I wish I could be with you on this journey forever and a day. I know it's not possible, but I so wish that it was. What I ask of you is that you take what I have started and turn it into something much more meaningful and much more magnificent." And it was just incredible to be reading this that she had highlighted after she passed. And there was this other section, you know, and it just said the body is remarkable with what you can cope with. Sorry, I have some dogs. You know, the body is remarkable with what it can cope with. And so, you know, your mind can heal, your body can heal. And just reading all of these empowering quotes in a book was phenomenal. And that gave me the drive. And, you know, it did shift my priorities. We always say that life's too short, but I don't think you realise until a tragedy comes along just how short it is.
Yeah.
And so having had this experience, the lessons and the growth that I've had this year are incredible, phenomenal. I always add the caveat, which was an important part of my grief process, to express that despite all the learnings and the growth I've had, the sacrifice I made for those will always outweigh any learning that I've ever made. I would sooner have my mum back and hand all that back, of course. And I think that's a really important part of grief, is that we must remember that nothing will ever negate the loss.
Yeah.
You don't move on from grief, you don't shrink it, you don't fix it. For me, it was facing it straight on, dealing with it, really feeling and processing these emotions and incorporating it into my everyday life now. That nothing will ever negate the loss, the sacrifice will always be greater. And I think that's a really important thing I like to say for those experiencing grief.
Yeah. Yeah. And grief is something that people have to move through. It's not today I'm feeling grieved and tomorrow I won't have grief. I mean, even as, you know, people 30 years from a tragedy still can navigate that grief. It's just a matter of how you're moving through it. right? And I think we often see it as this like hurdle we have to get over versus this sort of army we need to walk with, right? And so it's just been, as I said, it's just been so beautiful to watch you, of course I would, take that grief away from you in a moment, but how you've navigated that grief and how you still continue to show up into the world, I think is such an important lesson for those who are fortunate to be in your life, because you really have done it so beautifully, and allowed yourself to not be ashamed of grief too. Grief is not something to be shamed of, or it doesn't have an expiration date where, all right, come on, Shoshana, it's been a year, get over it, love, let's get moving, right? But it's just something really beautiful to watch as you navigate that and have that become both a piece of your life and the motivation for your life as well, right? And now in the work that you're doing. So as you're working in Kaleidoscope Life, who are the ideal clients, or who are the clients who are coming to you, and what sort of opportunities are they looking for? I don't want to say challenges because that feels too negative, but where are they seeking for opportunities in their life?
So I mainly focus on, so I say loss, but it's really important that people understand loss can cover a variety of things. So because of my experience, absolutely, clients who are trying to navigate this new world because of the loss of a loved one, how do I get through? How do I push through? How do I find this new meaning that everyone's telling me I'll find as a result of the grief of what happened to me? But also it's simply like loss of normalcy, loss of direction, loss of meaning. And so a lot of people come and change. It's really people who are experiencing change and don't like it, because a lot of us can't. We want to know what's happening, or we think we want to know what's happening. If someone was to actually give you an envelope to say what would happen, I don't think we would all read it, But I think that it's really about helping people who have lost their way in whatever way, shape or form, after a relationship, feeling stuck in their career, not having a job now because of COVID. So it's really helping guide and support people to rediscover some of what's so precious about them, their treasure and their gifts that they may have lost along the way. And now they're realizing they need to dig deep to find them in order to present themselves back in a way that they feel more fulfilled into the world. So it's a lot of, I talk about, so I love using the kaleidoscope analogy, which is actually my mum's. It's built off her legacy. It was something that she created. But it's, when you have the kaleidoscope, the theory behind the kaleidoscope is when you experience trauma or tragedy, and it doesn't have to be the loss of a loved one. The end of a relationship is traumatic. Any change is traumatic. Being pregnant, So it really encompasses a wide variety of things. But I think it's really about helping people just uncover things they've lost along the way. So that's what it's about, really shifting, taking these pieces in the kaleidoscope. How do we take these pieces, these fragments from when you felt whole, but now the trauma's happened and it's shattered, but all these pieces which are beautiful, it's all your core. When you do a click of a kaleidoscope, it's, a different perspective, looking through a different lens. I offer up those different, reframing. It's how do you integrate all those pieces? We don't fix you and put you back together how you were before the trauma. That's not where we want to get to. It's not realistic. How do we evolve and integrate those experiences? It still remains beautiful. And so a lot of it's, shifting perspectives, discovering new, shifting old patterns, discovering new ways of viewing. And ultimately, that to me is the formula for transformation. Shifting those patterns, unlearning behaviors, creating new ways, discovering new helpful behaviors.
Right. Recognizing patterns that aren't necessarily serving you. It's so easy to fall back into those negative patterns, or to seek out, the same the same version, of a boyfriend or a relationship that you just came out of that didn't serve you, right? And so recognizing those, those patterns of, if that last relationship didn't work out and I'm now going into a new relationship that's the same guy, it's just a different address. There's got to be something on my side that needs to be identified to say, why is that so attractive to you? So just kind of recognizing those patterns, I think that's important work. And I love that analogy of the kaleidoscope, because it feels like all the pieces are there. It's just a matter of clicking them into the right pattern for you. And that pattern might shift and change over time. It's not to say that once you click it in, that's how it should be. That's the image it'll be forever. But recognizing that all the beautiful pieces are already in there. And it's just up to you to sort of create the art, right? Which is really a beautiful analogy.
That's exactly, yeah. Honestly, that's exactly it, Nicole. It really is about you already have it all within you, which is what's incredible. I'm not bringing or giving you anything new in that sense. I'm just helping you through it, find it, shape it. How do we take all this greatness that you really do already have? You might not be able to see it, but you do. Giving them a different alternative perspective. There's something about creating a space with someone who is not your family or your loved one or anyone that you know, who just gives you that different perspective.
Yeah.
It really kind of sits in and resonates. Your friends can say things, and it might be that your coach says something similar, but when you hear it from someone who is independent, it just lands more meaningfully. And that's really the importance of it, creating that safe, non-judgmental space where you can be your vulnerable self, be very honest with yourself and open.
Yeah. And I think, through my years of therapy in different chapters of my life, I would find sometimes that as I was saying it out loud to this neutral party, the ridiculousness that suddenly it would seem in my own head, or the aha moment, it would be so clear. Whereas if I was saying that same thing, perhaps to my family or to, my best friend, there's still this slant of sort of trying to justify it or make an excuse for it. But there is something really powerful about talking to somebody who you connect with, but who isn't emotionally invested in you the way that those other people in your circle are. And so I found that to be such a blessing of counseling or therapy throughout my life. It was almost like the therapist didn't even have to say anything. I was answering my own question by just, the verbal vomit of what I was saying, which was such a catastrophe before I walked in the room. And then it was like, when I was saying it to this independent person, the ridiculousness of it or the truth of it just suddenly really became so evident. So having somebody like you, in our arsenal, I think is just important, especially as women, as entrepreneurs. There's, as single women, as women who choose to have families or not have families, and the pressures. And I mean, it's just a lot. Every day we wake up with a lot. And so, having somebody like you and the resources you provide, I think is just a great, tool in the toolbox of life. So, yeah.
I think it's the listening that's so important, because as much as we love our friends and family, they might not always just let us vent and just listen and hear. Because like you say, the key thing is you will come to it, the answer by yourself. You have the answers exactly as you've said. You hit the nail on the head. That's correct. But you need someone to provide that space. And I think what happens with friends and family is, and I am different with my friends and family as I am with clients, because we have this desire, because we love them so much. Okay, let me fix it. I'm just going to jump in here. Let me jump in and give my opinion, or this is my experience.
Right.
It doesn't help. It's not about fixing. More often than not, 9 times out of 10, unless somebody says, can I get your advice on this? I've got option A or B. What do I go for? I'd like a different perspective. Unless someone specifically starts with, can I get your advice? We shouldn't be giving advice. People just want to be heard. They want to let it out. It's up here tangled. By verbalizing it, it starts to bring some form and some shape to it, and we figure it out ourselves. But we need someone to create that space for us.
Right. And the world is a funny place now with social media and these like artificial relationships that we have, or we start to measure ourselves against, you know, those images on Instagram, and why am I not for, you know, look at her, she's got, you know, X number of followers, or she's making X number of dollars a year, or she has that beautiful family or that perfect boyfriend. I mean, it was like every day it's like this measure of how am I shaping up, and just to have that neutral party, again, somebody like you who has not lost the gift of conversation and the ability to listen, I think is a really powerful tool that I wish more women in particular would pay attention to, and not look as that's not a weakness. To have somebody like you who can help coach them and guide them through a difficult period or transition, you know, there's no shame in that, right? You know, don't seek the answers on Instagram, but seek the answers in a real conversation with a real person who can help navigate that for you, I think is really, really an important lesson.
And more than ever right now, because of social media, like you say, it creates such a false illusion of truth. You know, so many people on social media are insecure and need to portray this perfect life. And I would say, I think it's so important as women that we are honest with other women about what we're feeling. My marriage is tough. My pregnancy is getting to me. This does suck. We have to start telling other women the truth, because otherwise we'll go around feeling miserable. We think we're giving the illusion that, I'm living a great life. We don't realize that someone who sees that on the other side could go home and be really low about that all night. And we've created that. We don't often think about the final step in it, but we just think about ourselves. I want people to think I live a great life.
Yeah.
We don't see the consequences of how we've just made someone else feel. And I think if we thought about that first, maybe we wouldn't try and create this, you know, fake world that's wonderful. And also, I'm really big on authenticity. That's the number one step before you do anything. And that's about knowing who you are, owning who you are, and being who you are. Now, the problem is, it's really hard to know who you are in this world, because we are so influenced by the social media, the media, others around us, institutions, parents that we've grown up with. So much of what we do is subconscious. We really go around on autopilot. It's actually embarrassing how little we do. It's autopilot. Yeah. So a huge part of what I do is slowing someone down, really taking away that noise. What would you be doing right now if judgment didn't exist in this world? Let's say for one moment we lived in a world where judgment, it didn't exist. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't a possibility that anyone could comment on someone else's, you know, what they're doing. What would you be doing? And then you can start to peel back and get to the core of what it is. Who am I? What do I want to do? Yeah. So much of the time women, I think, are under pressure now to have a big career. You know, I love what's been done for us in that, and how far we've come as women, but also I think we've kind of flipped on the other end of some women who do want to be an at-home mum, then feel guilty. They think they need to have this high-flying career. You don't want to have a high-flying career if you don't want to have a career. That's absolutely fine. But we've put this pressure. And so it's really the authenticity. There's a fantastic quote, and I find it really powerful, and I think people need to hear it more. It's in a book I'm reading on authenticity, and the writer of the book says, if you're the author of your story, why are you giving someone else the pen?
So good.
And I think that because we are, we do want to think that we are the author of our story, and we should be the author of our story, but we're letting too many people take that pen and write it for us. Yeah. So because we're fearful of being judged and not loved. Yeah. So get rid of some of that to get you back to not feeling fearful, not worrying about that judgment, and just feeling really good about who you are, owning it, and being able to show it into the world.
Yeah, no, that's so powerful. That absolutely is powerful. So that segues us into books and podcasts. And where do you find your inspiration, and what are you reading, and all of those things? Are you a reader? Are you a podcast listener? How do you absorb your information?
I'm a little bit of both. I think that to me, like real knowledge and perspective can only ever be found by reading, listening to everybody else and their perspectives, even if you don't agree with it. And so all my books now are personal growth. I heard this Jay Shetty, who's a British coach who I love. He said, look at your bookshelf. What's on your bookshelf because you thought it looked impressive and you thought you'd get around to reading but you haven't read? Get rid of them. You don't want them on there. They're of no use to you. So I threw out a load on like big business, recruiting, because I fell into that trap of big money, success in the corporate world. I got rid of them. They went to the little library. All I have on my shelf now is really personal growth books. So anything, there's a guy called Gary John Bishop. He's a real no messing, no sugarcoating Scottish guy who I think who's pretty good. I've been reading his stuff. Really just, anything on personal growth, dealing with uncertainty, dealing with change, stepping out into who you are, authenticity. And my podcast are the same as well. Yeah. So the reading and my absorbing of knowledge, it really is, a lot of it's in that space. When I'm outside of it and I'm with friends, I actually really switch off and very different. That's where I get my change and pace. But I want to be, learning. A big part of, again, a legacy from my mum is she had done so much self-growth. I've got a card right here on my side table that just says, my entire life has been about the journey to being myself, and nothing is better than that. And that's what I want. It's incredible. And I just think that's what I want to do. And my brother so beautifully turned around to me one day. He always calls me sis. And he goes, sis, mum completed her journey on this earth. The final chapter in her story is that we complete ours. Oh. And I just thought, first of all, I thought, where did this come from? This isn't the brother that I know. But it's true. So really, the personal growth and then being able to inspire others is such a part of it. So it's all just, coaching, and, you listen to a podcast and they have someone else on it who's got their own podcast, kind of domino effect in that sense. Yep. So, and what I'm really trying to do is when I hear something or see something in a book, and I'm like, oh, I really agree with that. I'm stopping and I'm asking myself why. Because I really want to know, do I agree with it because I'm in my autopilot mode? Because my mum told me that was the right way when I grew up, because, organisations and governments tell me that's the way I should think? Or do I actually agree with it because I really genuinely agree with it? Yeah. And if I read something where I think, I absolutely don't agree with that, that's absurd, I'm really working on putting my ego to one side. So why do you think it's absurd? Again, is it just because of what you've been fed and you now have a subconscious feeling towards it? Because that's how we grow and expand and change. You have to be willing to alter your beliefs. Yeah, 100%. To ensure they really are what you are. Right. Yeah, and have difficult conversations. I mean, I think we're in that chapter now in society where people are having difficult conversations around race and, gender and identity, and be a willing participant in those conversations, as difficult as they can be. Last night I was watching the Oprah conversation. She's got a new series out all around race, and she has taken to, there's a gentleman named Emmanuel Acho, who's a former professional football player, and he's got a series now called The Uncomfortable Conversation with a Black Man, and it's been just eye-opening, and it's a beautiful piece of television. And so Oprah saw that and sort of absorbed him into now the Oprah fold, and they did this great conversation where they took white people who were willing to say, here's the question I've always wanted to ask, or why is it this way? And it was really powerful. I mean, there was moments where you think, gosh, I didn't realize that maybe I had that bias, or I thought that same way, or anything. But just those uncomfortable conversations, I think we're in that place right now where there's so much encouragement of uncomfortable conversations that it would be a shame to not be in the game, right? To not be having those conversations either with yourself or with other people who look like you or don't look like you, or I hear what you're saying about that. That's really great. So in the spirit of the podcast being the big ask, has there been a time in your life when you've had to make a big ask, and what was the setup for that, and what was the outcome? A big ask from the universe.
Yes. Or it could be professionally. I mean, it could have been,
Well,
convincing your boss to that you could move to
yeah,
America. I mean, it could be anything. There's no limit on what the big ask is. It's just always something that kind of puts you in a vulnerable spot, or kind of pushes you to do something more than just a typical ask.
I think that actually I would probably say it's been the asking for help since losing my mum last year. So
Okay.
I think a lot of us as women especially, because we want to give the illusion that we've got everything together because of the pressure that's put on us. And so I think it wasn't one specific moment, but it was when I really just had to turn and lean on people and ask for them to be patient with me and ask for their help supporting and ask them to listen to me, tell the same story about my mum over and over again.
Yeah.
Because that was part of my process. So I think my big ask was really putting it out there to others, my collective community that I've been really fortunate to have had prior, to have, like I say, have patience with me if you don't hear from me, or I don't respond as positively or as me, because I'm struggling with patience and so on. So I think that when I look back, I think it was just asking for help and being okay with asking for help, not feeling ashamed or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. It's even those small, I curb it under the big ask, but it's collectively, right? It's those small little asks that you made along the way is really that bigger ask. But just being honest with yourself and saying, this is what I need to process, and this is what I need from my community of people around me as well. People always say, let me know if I can help you. And more the times than not, we just ignore that request, right? But just even saying to people, no, this is, if you don't hear from me, or if I'm curt, or if I'm not as bubbly and, as I normally am, it's no reflection on you or our relationship. It's just where I am, at the moment. And so I think that's a really beautiful example of that. So great. You and I share a passion for an organization called Home Start, which is a child abuse prevention agency here in San Diego. So that's been a gift. And so outside of that, I know furry little creatures with 4 legs or sometimes 3 legs in your case, are near and dear to your heart. So what would you say are those causes that are important to you?
Yeah, I think dog charities, animal, I think, just them not being able to have that voice, being able to express. I feel a real kind of need and draw towards animals. So there's the Soy Dog Foundation in Thailand. They do incredible work getting stray dogs off the street that have really been battered and abused. Spay and neutering, getting them back up to as fit a health as they can, having them adopted out. They also do a big campaign against the dog meat trade in Southeast Asia, which is quite significant. And so one of my dogs is actually from Thailand. So I really love the Soy Dog Foundation. Change for Animals Foundation, based out of Indonesia. They do some brilliant work for animal welfare. And then because I left a career in child protection and prevention, I still needed to feel like I was doing that sort of work. And that's why I kind of ended up flipping it into the volunteer side. So as you being on the board of Home Start, helping those vulnerable women get access to life, starting really early intervention with the children. I think it's incredible at the therapy services that we offer for parents and how to look after kids, and then giving them access to basic needs of shelter, food, education, that sort of help is important to me. So it's hard. We want to help everything and everyone, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Tell people that I support this dog charity, and they say, well, there are kids who are struggling in Africa, and I know that, and I wish I had the time and capacity to do it with everything, but we have to choose which ones focus on well. So I have a charity with Home Start, and then I have the dog stuff, particularly with Soy Dog and Change for Animals Foundation, and I volunteer at a couple of shelters here in San Diego as well. get
Well,
my puppy.
I mean, most people go on vacation and they come back with a t-shirt. You like to bring dogs back because isn't there one also from Italy? Is there
There
another
is.
one from Italy? Yes. Okay. So
So I'm Italian and Italian, and I did have to speak to the Italian in Italian when I first got him. I had to use Italian commands to, for come here and
yeah.
enough. So yes, I always say that I was like the Angelina Jolie of the dog world, a dog from every nation. I can't help myself. It's terrible.
I know. Well, that's because you have so much love to give to the world, and we all benefit from that. So, all right. Well, this has been a great conversation. We always end every podcast with rapid fire questions. So these are just intended to be fun. First thing that comes to your mind. No judgment from me or the listeners. Just whatever is just rapid fire. Okay. So there's
Okay.
10 questions.
Oh,
So first question is title of your lifetime movie.
title of my lifetime movie.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm overthinking. Oh gosh. Title of my lifetime movie. Something with dogs. I can't think. Something to do with this obsession with dogs.
Okay.
It's not coming to me now.
Okay. If you could change places with any celebrity right this minute, who would it be?
Oh gosh, any celebrity right this minute. Do they have to be alive?
No, it can be real, fake. It can be a cartoon character. It doesn't
Oh,
matter.
I am actually Martin Luther King.
Oh, very good. Okay, that's a good one. When do you feel happiest?
Or when do I feel happiest? Truly when I have my dogs around me, and really when those who I love are succeeding. When my best friend just passed the bar and I was in floods of tears for hours afterwards. I was just so when they're happy, and in my contemplation with my dogs.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, if you were running for politics, what would be your biggest campaign promise? And it's not like you haven't lived in the United States during the biggest circus of our history of our country. So
my biggest promise would be to follow through on the promises I'm making.
Yeah, that's a good one, right? That'd be nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Ultimate dinner party. Which 4 guests do you invite and why? And again, they can be alive, dead, fictional characters.
I would 100% obviously have my mum, and actually I would have my mum, my stepdad, my brother, so that we could and me, that we could just have a lovely dinner, the 4 of us again. Yeah.
Oh, that would be great. All right. Right this minute, you have to get a tattoo. What do you get and why?
I would probably get something of a kaleidoscope to solidify the journey that I'm on.
Yes. Good. Okay. Biggest pet peeve in business?
In business. When companies say they have a good culture and they don't. They talk a good story, but they're not walking it.
Yeah. Good. Okay. What is your wish for the next generation?
Oh, gosh. There's a lot of them. I wish for the next generation that people were only able to accurately portray what was going on in their life in social media.
Yes. Good. All right. Good. When does your light shine the brightest?
It shines the brightest when I am around others who are helping to turn the brightness level up with their support and their help.
Okay, good. All right, last question. What is your big ask, either personally or professionally, right this minute, and how can we help you?
My big ask would be for everyone to go away and really think about one truth within themselves that they have almost been lying to themselves about, that they haven't been brave enough to look at and discover. And I would ask that they own that and take that out there, and just, even if it's just that one change that they implement, but dive deep. What is something that you really like, that you really want, that you've been hiding from the world through fear?
Yeah, all good. Well, Miss Shoshanna, thank you so much for saying yes to my ask when I asked you to be a guest on the podcast. It was wonderful to spend this last hour with you. So thank you so much for your wisdom and your continual bright light, because there is not a person who is in the room with you who just feels like they're a better version of themselves, thanks to the gifts that you share and just the energy you bring to everything you do. So continued success to you on your journey with Kaleidoscope Life. And I can't wait to be your biggest cheerleader on the sideline. So thank you so much. And we'll look forward to our next episode of the Big Ass Podcast. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.